Who doesn't love a good Pixar film? For years, since the studio's inception back in 1979, the hardworking team at the animation studio have delivered complete classics within the medium, using the animation format as a bridge to convey complex ideas and themes through a lens that people, and especially children, can understand. You see, Pixar films aren't just created to entertain us. They are crafted to make us feel, and make us feel they do. Through film after film, Pixar has made generations of children, and sometimes their parents, cry and feel emotion by displaying a raw poignancy that cannot be found within comparable works in the animation industry. It's almost become a sort of label for the studio in and of itself. People jokingly say all the time whenever you see the Pixar logo at the beginning of the movie, that's when you know you're about to ugly cry. And I myself am one of the people who have been emotionally affected over and over again by the studio's output. By combining complex narrative composition with character dynamics that feel real and authentic in every sense of the word, Pixar has gained a fundamental understanding of how to fuse the blend between children's entertainment and the larger biosphere of cinema as a whole. Yet also, this has led to unintended consequences for the studio that they've had to deal with within their recent output as a whole. You see, Pixar's films are meant to move the audience emotionally, but what happens when this becomes the entire focus of these films? You see, Pixar's last few films have been criticized for falling into a sort of self-parody trap, in which the focus now seems less intent on telling layered stories and more on making the audience cry. This has led to reactions calling their recent output of work emotionally manipulative and self-indulgent, leading to a rift between fans of the company where you either love the angle Pixar instills into their recent films, or you find yourself wanting the complex storytelling of old back with urgency. For myself personally, I understand and fall into both camps with ease. You see, I understand the backlash against Pixar for focusing their efforts solely on an emotional response to their films, but I also understand there's an element that Pixar as a studio uses to great success in their films. But what once was a balanced blend between the two has now become a recipe where both ingredients are out of balance, leading to an overpowering aftertaste that might leave audiences not wanting to come back for more. And this is exactly the same mindset I had when I walked into my screening for their newest animated film, Elio, which hits theaters this weekend. Now, heading into this one, I was aware of a lot of the criticism that had already been lauded onto the film for its visual style alone. You see, the individual character designs of Pixar old had now been replaced with a stock quote-unquote cal art style that seems overly simplistic and never complex or nuanced enough to immerse audiences into these worlds of these stories, complete with an overly cartoony look with exaggerated facial expressions. And usually, as it has been in my past reviews of Pixar films, this will be a point of criticism on the film itself, as I truly believe artistic individuality is an important factor of many films, regardless of medium or genre. Yet ultimately, I walked away from this film not completely hating what the art style accomplishes here. Granted, it's still the same stock animation style the studio has been relying on for years now, but for what it's worth, this is simultaneously the best use of and the furthest they pushed this animation style since they started employing it into their films. You see, Elio is an interesting film from Pixar's filmography. On its surface, it doesn't appear like it tries to accomplish anything different from their older films, complete with a story that feels poignant and impactful, and a variety of setting and character designs that feel enthralling and captivating. Yet ultimately, I walked away from Elio incredibly moved and affected at the centralized emotional core of the film, which is such a layered and nuanced exploration into the inherent worth of relationships within our modern day society, and the importance of finding your own place in the universe, even if it's alongside alien life forms from another galaxy. Now, don't get me wrong, I am not calling Elio one of Pixar's best works by far. We'll get into the narrative and storytelling problems it inherently has, but I'd also be lying if I said that Elio isn't a supremely touching and nuanced film about companionship that feels like something we all need right now. Elio follows the story of the titular character who lives with his aunt Olga on a military base. Elio is a character who doesn't feel understood by any of his peers. He's resourceful, spirited, and opinionated, which all prove to be challenges to his aunt, who struggles to understand how to rise to the challenges of being a parent when Elio's parents die and she's tasked with taking care of her nephew. And similarly, Elio doesn't feel like he understands those people around him, as his interests in extraterrestrial life scare not only his peers, but his aunt as well. However, this all changes when Elio transmits a signal out to the universe and the call is answered, and he is abducted by aliens and is invited to join the Communiverse, a vast array of alien representatives from other planets. And for the first time in his life, in a galaxy much different from his own, Elio begins to feel understood in every sense of the word. And this is perhaps the most poignant and impactful cornerstone of the entire film, which is a complex discussion and exploration into individuality, and about how the quirks that make us who we are stand out the most and are the most impactful thing about us, which is such a powerful theme and message. Elio is a character who simultaneously feels misunderstood by those around him and struggles to understand a cruel and heartless world after his parents pass on. Yet ultimately, the element that makes both Elio as a character and as a film overall feel so impactful is how it takes this inherent emotional core of feeling alone inside of the universe and uses it to explore how each of these characters find a semblance of connection and companionship in the most unlikely of places, and begin to understand their specific role in the larger scale of the universe. For Elio as a character specifically, this means taking on the fake role of the leader of Earth during the Communiverse session as a way of showcasing his complexity, as he begins to foster peace between the main antagonist of the film, Lord Gragon, and the rest of the alien inhabitants. Yet this overlying emotional angle also extends over Elio's relationship with Glorden, who is Lord Gragon Gragon's small son. You see, Lord Gragon wants Glorden to follow in his footsteps, to become a fierce ruler of the galaxy that rules with an iron fist and strikes fear in the hearts of his enemies. Yet, Glorden himself doesn't entirely want to follow in these exact footsteps. He doesn't share his father's love of worldwide chaos and destruction, and follows along blindly out of a deep-set fear of what might happen if he tells his own father that he wants to strike his own individual path in life. However, upon a chance meeting with Elio, and as they become best friends, he begins to understand that becoming your own unique person is more important than giving into the harsh pressure placed upon you by society to be something else. Glorden begins to understand that his individuality makes him unique, and begins to reconcile this angle with his own father due to Elio's help. Yet this also affects Elio on a more complex level as well, as when Elio realizes that Glorden's individuality makes him inherently unique and meaningful, he begins to understand that his lack of connection with his peers on Earth isn't inherent. Rather, Elio begins to realize that he has to look for that semblance of connection, even in the most unlikely of places, which also means his aunt Olga, who herself feels somewhat estranged and distant from her nephew. This is because Olga doesn't know how to raise a child as precocious as Elio. With the loss of her brother and Elio's father, she feels alone in the universe. Yet she, like Elio, begins to find that semblance of connection in the most unlikely of places as well. But rather within the alien biosphere, however, she finds it closer to the ground in her nephew, who is himself grappling with the loss of his parents and is also looking for a person to call a confidant, or a friend in the sense of the word. And this emotionally layered and complex emotional core that runs throughout the film is perhaps the strongest part of Elio's vast storytelling capabilities. Elio is a powerful display of individual characters all finding companionship and friendship in places they normally wouldn't expect, and how finding this connection heals the wounds of familial trauma and grief that lie dormant inside. And this makes for truly surprising and emotional moments that feature a signature Pixar angle in terms of emotion. They don't feel inherently gimmicky or manipulative here. Rather, they blend into the setting and the world of the film with ease, taking a backseat to the more prevalent and vibrant elements of the story when necessary, yet never disappearing completely and remaining present when the story requires it. Within this world chock full of emotional nuance and understanding, we are also presented with character and world designs that feel so enthralling and nuanced, leaping off the screen with a surprising amount of depth and immersing audiences from start to finish. The world of the Communiverse is a world chock full of that creative vibrancy that Pixar is known and loved for, becoming an ever-present and evolving world that seems picturesque and perfect at first glance, yet, like our world, harbors imperfections and shortcomings with ease. Using seamless animation to showcase such a vast and colorful world, the artistic team at Pixar is truly showcasing what they do best, which is creating wholly realized and unique worlds that feel fleshed out in every sense of the word. And the music score by Rob Simonson is also a highlight here, with so much dramatic weight and careful composition in each scene it's used effectively to highlight and showcase personal dynamics and emotional moments between characters with ease. Yet, while Elio might succeed as a rousing and emotionally layered exploration into individuality and grief, it does not manage to live up to the past Pixar films of old in terms of being a full, well-rounded cinematic experience overall. The story problems on display are apparent from the start, as the tonally off first act eventually evens out into something quite manageable, yet the third act also suffers from the same problem, which is that it feels rushed with no sense of definitive closure. While the ultimate last shot of the film is supremely impactful and emotionally resonant, I was left wanting more. I wanted some semblance of closure to the characterization and character arcs that have been explored thus far. I wanted something grander in terms of thematic depth and substance within this important and impactful segment of the film. Yet, I also understand some of these issues, as the film's numerous delays behind the scenes might indicate some struggle, and the execution overall isn't as distracting as it could have been. And in this sense, Elio is also a film where you'll be able to see directly where the film is headed well before it happens. There is nothing about the plot beats or moments here that feels wholly original, no matter how creative everything on display is, which makes for tropes and nuances that feel quite derivative, especially from other Pixar films in general. Yet, although Elio might not be one of Pixar's best, it's also a film you just can't help but ultimately love. As you watch the film and Elio himself begins to understand what friendship and connection mean in such a profound and fundamental way, the audience themselves can't help but examine the specific subject through their own individual lens as well, which makes for some truly powerful moments of emotional poignancy that cut incredibly deep. The message of Elio is apparent from the first frame to the last. We are not alone. And while this film might explore this theme through the concept of alien life forms within the galaxy, and the communication that arises between this alien species and humanity, it also explores this theme through the concept of our relationships with each other. Through all our trials and stresses in life, when anything might seem too difficult or too far out of reach, we are not alone. We can always rely on the people closest to us for the support and companionship required to get through any large-scale obstacle. For this reason, Elio is a vibrant world with layered emotional nuance in spades. This is a story definitely worth telling, and it's worth hearing as a result. While it might not reinvent the wheel for Pixar as a studio, the film remains as charming, creative, and poignant as any animated film within the last few years alone, and will delight and charm audiences who decide to join Elio on his extraterrestrial adventure this weekend. That's why I'm giving Elio a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Elio is in theaters everywhere this Friday. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this review on my channel. If you're new around here and you like the content you see, don't forget to click that subscribe button down below, like the video, and turn on push notifications. Also, leave comment suggestions down below for future video, essay, and review topics. With that being said, until next time, this is Mitchell signing off. Peace out.